And good evening to our Barnard community. That's members of our Board of Trustees, our alumni, our students, faculty, our administrators, and the staff who take care of everything here tonight, the water, the tables, the chairs. And also good evening to our community beyond our gates, especially our easterly neighbors across Broadway, otherwise known as Columbia University. It is a special honor to speak to you tonight, to stand before you, and to do so on behalf of Africana Studies, my colleagues whom I admire and respect and whom I see daily and discover a daily joy on what I call this floor of fabulousness, which is the second floor of Barnard Hall, if you are predisposed to visiting us. So one of the reasons why I'm so happy is that this tonight is a convergence. It's a convergence of all that we hope for in education, a liberal arts education, and more especially it's what we hope Barnard's mission will deliver. And that is to position students to take advantage of all opportunities that present to them. New ideas, new horizons in all fields of thought and study and profession. And one of those opportunities that we don't speak about, but it's actually been celebrated tonight, is the friendship. Friendship that is made at colleges, a meeting of the minds, a meeting of people who share aspiration. So this is, of course, what Denise Jackson-Lewis is honoring tonight. And she's honoring the friendship that she made when she was at Barnard, the friendship with Adieze Okoye. What is being honored tonight is also extending the life of Barnard Africana Studies. The distinguished lecture in Africana Studies, the Louis Ezikoya Distinguished Lecture, makes Barnard Africana one of the few Africana Studies departments in the country to host such an annual event. It signals that our hope is to be, there's no two ways about it. I want us to be the premier Africana Studies department in the country. Thank you. Thank you. And that is not where Denise Lewis's generosity stops. Her generosity extends to the creation and support of the Harlem Semester. And it's the Harlem Semester that has Africana faculty collaborating with institutions in Harlem and enabling us to be the good neighbor we really should be. So thank you for that extra extension of helping us have walls that open. And tonight we have a distinguished alum, Ntozake Shange. I was going to give you a quote from her many books, and I just didn't know where to start. I saw orange butterflies and aqua sequins, and that, of course, was The Lady in Red. And I remembered a woman in brown who found Toussaint Louverture in a library just down the railway tracks. But really where to start? Where to start is actually to be quiet, to just let Ntozake speak as she's going to tonight. This playwright, this poet, the novelist, the observer, the listener, the thinker who returns to us, a graduate of 1970, who will be responded to by a graduate of 2007. So we thought we'd made a mistake in the program. So I don't want to speak much more tonight, but also except to say that we're so glad, Sydney, that you're back with us tonight. We welcome you back again and again, and I wish that our Africana students who are here tonight would actually grab you and speak to you to talk about the life after Africana Studies, about the life that goes on. Please do bang the drum. So artist, activist, and woman-centered in all of her performances, and unapologetic for this, because as her community work has shown her, there is still work to be done. Now, tonight, our two distinguished guests will speak to you directly. And so I think it's inappropriate for me to say any more about them. It is best for them to speak. So if I may invite Dawn Williams, who is from I call it the Department of Happy Giving, the Department of Annual Giving, who is the one who really, really facilitated this connection. And Dawn, thank you so much, and you will do the intros.
Thank you. I am representing the Development Department, the place that brings the funds into the college, but I just want to focus on two of our alums, distinguished alums, Denise Jackson-Lewis and Ntozake Izekoye, and their friendship. And for just a moment, while Denise had a vision for social justice, certainly before she came to Barnard, it was strengthened during her time as a student. And she led the student effort to expand Barnard's curriculum to include the study of history and culture of developing countries and African American experience. This effort paved the way for what is now the Department of Africana Studies. So as you students see your efforts, and you can see some of the things that do happen that come along, she didn't stop there. She continued her vision, going on to create and endow the Denise Lewis Jackson Ntozake Izekoye lectureship in honor of her lifelong friendship with Ada, which began when they were Barnard students. For this, we are grateful. And I feel fortunate to have been traveling along with them on this part of their journey for this short while, and in particular, to be honored to steward the development of this portion of the lecture. And Denise, I just have a little announcement to you. I know that while you're aware that your firm, Hoynigan, Miller, Schwartz, and Cohn, is making a contribution to your fund, what you didn't know is that the Equity Women of Hoynigan have started an initiative as well. And individuals have made the gifts, not just the flowers that they brought, but individuals have made a gift in honor. And I just want to read the words that they shared with us. Denise, while you are aware that your firm, Hoynigan, Miller, Schwartz, and Cohen, has made a contribution, we are grateful to have you as our partner, colleague, and leader, and are so proud of your achievements. Cherish the moment. The Equity Women of Hoynigan. So before we talk, I just want to give a little bit of time for Denise and Ada to make a short speech, or not to talk about themselves before we get started. We don't want to take too long, but they've come a long way, and they've worked a great deal to be here and to have this time with you. So I hope you will give them a bit of time.
Can you hear us? Yes. Good. It's very important to us, so I want to make sure that you can hear us. I want you to know, for Ada and I, and Ada will speak for herself, but it is with a great sense of joy and fulfillment that we reach this point today. The circle is complete. During my years at Barnard, I yearned for the kinds of classes that you're able to have now with Africana Studies. And current students have a gift that we would have wanted. And we, Ada and I and others, gave leadership to asking Barnard, urging Barnard to open the curriculum to study about Africa, Asia, other parts of the world. And we feel that that's available now for our students. So it is with great joy and satisfaction that I'm able to support Africana Studies with the endowment of this lectureship, and the Harlem semester is also very important. Our journey began with a friendship forged on the first day of our time at Barnard as freshmen, if you can believe that. It was really the first day. And we met and we became and continue to be lifelong friends. That friendship connected us across continents and cultures bringing us together as Africa and the diaspora. We understood that we had common goals, common roots, and that's the foundation of this endowment. We want to share this with the Barnard community, and we hope you will accept it and embrace it. We want to witness our common heritage. We are dedicated to continuing the search for what binds us, what keeps us together, and we hope that this endowment will contribute to encouraging the academic dialogue and research that will help us reach that goal. We aim to expose the next generation of Barnard students to the study of Africa and the many, many parts of the diaspora. We are happy that you are here to share this with us today, and we have our dearest alumni circle members that are here. Juanita came all the way from California, Faith from North Carolina, Gussie is here, and Tom, and our friend Janie is ill, but her spirit is with us. My family is here, and I want to share that they are here in part because they too have great respect for their African heritage. My 2 sons and their spouses, my daughters, and my 3 precious grandchildren that are entertaining you. But it's for this generation that we are endowing this lectureship to give them a source of knowledge as they grow up. And we have good friends here who have traveled from many states to be part of today's experience. My dear companion, Dr. Lang, and my special friends, Martha and Sharon. Lastly, I want to thank the McGregor Fund for their support in endowing this lectureship. And I served on that board for many years. And my dear friend, who gave me the inspiration and the courage to do this, the chair of that board is here, and I want him to stand, Reuben Monday. Reuben has endowed, just so you know, he has helped endow a similar lectureship at Cornell. So let me say that is with great joy that I share this day with you, and I have so much hope for what the future will bring as we work on this together.
I personally want to thank Denise for making this possible. Can you all hear me? Yes. My kids said, don't worry, we can always hear you. And we decided to spare you my 8 grandkids. You know, Denise's were enough. But thank you very, very much for coming. I don't see my son here, but he did come. Yes, and he's out in the hall. I want to also thank everybody for coming, and my husband, Dr. Ike Ezekoya, over here. And one day, maybe we'll be sitting up here, because I think more than what Denise has said today, our story is actually quite interesting, how I came from Africa here, and how Denise came at a time when many people don't know or believe this, that actually Barnard had a quota and only 4 women of color were allowed to come in. And it's amazing that we got together and stayed. And I've often asked, what if, would we have had this friendship if we had gone to another school? Was it the school or the person? And I ask that quite often, and I'm sure the qualities were still there. We're not going to take up the time, but I think it's a very interesting study. I do want to thank all of you, and to thank a lot of our joint friends and special ones. I want to thank Shana Wertheimer, a special friend who's born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but has adopted New York as her home, for coming, and a lot of other special friends. And it's great to see so many young people that have come to this lecture without knowing who we are. And the Ezekoya family has also really embraced this. I do want to say, too, that it takes continual involvement to help grow this fund. Nothing is too small. And at Christmas time, when you think of who you're going to be giving to, this fund is not too small. I mean, it's not too big that a small contribution is not going to be useful. And we'd like to see people consider this at Christmas. Thank you very much for coming. Okay.
I want to thank the two remarkable women who endowed this fund for me to be able to come and speak to you today. Originally, we had planned in our dreams that my best friend, whom I met when I came to Barnard, Tulani Davis, and I would be able to give a speech together, but we couldn't arrange that, so I'm here, but her spirit is here. We've never left Barnard without feeling good. She taught here for a while, and I have been in and out of here for many years, always with a sense of gratitude and a sense of wonder. And I hope that I can share some of that ethos with you all this evening. I saw signs around today when I was walking in that said diaspora and movement. And I said, oh my God, who's doing that? Because I didn't have a title for what I was doing. I mean, I have a title, but it's not diaspora and movement. So I'll tell you my title, and then you'll probably choose diaspora and movement. But my title was The Implications of Black Dance. And that's as far as I got with the title. And the reason I asked that question is because I was thinking about a show I saw on the television not too long ago. It was of young hip-hop artists talking about their craft. And they were going on and on about what the role of the black artist was. I said, oh my God, we've been answering that since Charles Chestnut. And I said, Langston Hughes had to answer that. Zora Hurston had to answer that. Leroy Jones had to answer that. I've had to answer that. The role of the Negro as an artist and as a provocateur. The role of the Negro in the country would be a good question. But I'm not going to do that. That was an aside. The black people have been singing and dancing ever since we got here. We have been associated with singing and dancing and entertaining white people since we got here. We were enslaved to entertain white people and work the fields. To realize one has a body and to feel that body in motion, flying, stomping, sweating, sliding, turning, cascading in somersaults, or crossing the floor in a grand chassé or grand battements is to know freedom. I discovered my body late in life for a dancer, but I have been dancing all of my life. Whatever black people did with our behinds and our feet, I tried since I could walk. My mother said I took after my great Aunt Marie, who cut off her tresses in the roaring 20s and wore patent leather shoes to a funeral that shocked Augusta, Georgia. I just wiggled and shamed everybody, just like Marie. I could have been hers. But it was Katherine Dunham and her exquisite care for the black body that saved me from my wildness and the arbitrary forms of black vernacular dance that came so easily to all of us, but left no trace of our history from one generation to the next. From Haiti to Detroit, the black people danced. Dunham found a technique in our movement. She found our discipline that we had never named in our limbs, in our feet, in our necks, in our torsos. Contracting, extending, challenging rhythm with every beat. I found by chance teachers and compatriots who were also descendants of the Dunham technique and of the diaspora. Without discussion, without so much as a word, we shared this power and this beauty. I will share with you tonight some of my experiences with generations of Durham dancers. Now it is so formal, you can get certificates. Before you got a well-tuned body and knowledge of the source of your power in your groin and your thigh, in the arch of your foot. Now we can trace our movements and our desires for more to Sevilla Fort, Carmen de Lavalla, Judith Jamison, and Misty Copeland. There are so many black dancers who have gone unnamed and unrecognized that hopefully we will meet some of them tonight. We are fleeting in our knowledge of who we are, who the dancers are, how hard they work, what it takes to keep a company together, what it takes to make a dance, and what it takes to make a dancer is unknown to us because we do not write it down. I have tried to capture some of this mystery, this rugged creativity that informs black dance. I will introduce you to some of my most precious and hilarious moments with our creators. Their genius full of mirth, gravitas, and lyric. They are all of this, so individually and as a whole, we create the life of a people. Let's start with the late Fred Benjamin. A small crowd of brightly clad folks gathered by the door to the studio. Some in leotards and tights, others in knit body wraps or classic leggings to induce sweat. They all hovered by the tape recorder and the passel of tapes. Names like Minnie Riperton, Grace Jones, Lou Rawls, Michael Jackson, Blind Lemon Jefferson drew oohs and ahs from the dancers moving themselves to rhythms and unnamed melodies or just random beats that encouraged free movement. Outside the animated music focus groups, there were isolated hips and shoulders, warming up, doing first position and second position pliés, jazz port de bras, a weight-lifted back stretch in the corner, the rise in motion or sculpted tension wherever you looked. Suddenly, the dancers by the doors started moving across the studio with elan and spirit and discipline, staking out space for his or her body to articulate itself, and then a body, long, slim, red, yellow man walking through separated the class, students taking their places as the leader, Fred Benjamin, started the music and without a word began dancing, then his warm-up. Letting the class catch up with him, he lyrically explored space, all the while challenging the dancers' muscle memory and careful eyes to create, along with Benjamin, the beginning of phrases of a dance, which also served as a movement blending the disparate bodies into one breath, one aesthetic, one impulse. Always sleek as Benjamin's body, thrust through the class of dancers, reflecting his every gesture. The front line, usually professionals or gypsies, brought style and energy to the jazz fragments, parallel feet and knees, bent legs, perpendicular arms, and flat backs. A Fred Benjamin warm-up had commenced. Only the sex had to be called a mere inescapable sensuality in Benjamin's movement. The most casual hand gesture had a come-hither air to it. The stretches not only lure the shortest bodies into heights daring a would-be Judith Jamison to present herself. After familiarity with the movements, the class divided, so that the back three lines came forward and the front line moved to the back, so that everyone got a good look at what Fred was up to. Fred Benjamin had isolated torso and shoulders, led dance fragments and students in jazz pirouettes to a closeout, to dance, closeout. This is the first portion of the warm-up that left everyone aware of the central attributes of his or her body. The last line of dancers led gender-fluid dancers to rollick with bop moves and pirouettes to soar. Going across the floor, the rest of us proceeded with our more modest bop moves and attitude apogee, which lent drama to the moment. Finally, lead spiral turns and marches plié releve led to a dance run until everyone in the class was breathless, ready for the real work of the combination executed by groups of 4 or 5 individuals that could be observed, encouraged, and directed. The class ends with a rapid second position plie turns on a diagonal, ending with enormous applause for Fred Benjamin taking his bow at the end of the class, freeing the bodies of any type of rigidity. The hips sway, bosoms bounce, arms embrace the unseen other, every moment sweating. I knew Benjamin recognized me because I was a regular for the 2:30 class. I sat in the third row center so I could really see him without having to compete with the professional dancers in front of me. The first class I took after having my baby, I remember distinctly. I had lost so much weight in my eagerness not to be pregnant fat that I didn't recognize myself, but Fred did. He waved me to the front line, assuming that I could keep up, which I could. Like a colored butterfly after the final pirouette that ended with fingers slightly placed to the rear of the shoulder, one at a time, I saw Fred smiling at me, nodding his head. Yes, yes. What a day that was to search out affirmation. I danced with a new kind of confidence after that, leaving me to concentrate on my attitude and breath instead of my steps. Now I move more like a cat, or larger still, an ocelot. Fred Benjamin offered sensuality and sexuality and the right to full personhood, which was denied us as an oppressed people. We were intimidated by the depiction of us as beasts and sensual animals. We have to reclaim our sexuality. Fred Benjamin's dance allows us and dares us to do this. Now, Halifa Osumare. Halifa Osumare is a name that you must be familiar with by now because her book's been on sale since January. And it's a wonderful, fabulous recreation of black dance in the 60s and 70s. And it gives a foundation for black modern and jazz and Afro-Haitian and Afro-Cuban and Afro-Brazilian dance and Nigerian dance and Senegalese dance and Angolan dance and South African dance. It runs the whole gamut of what she has traced in this book. It's a must-read for anyone interested in the black people. On a muggy summer night, the village vanguard was warm and crowded. The line to see the legendary Pharoah Sanders, saxophonist, snaked around 7th Avenue. 7th Avenue itself was abuzz with black people in dashikis and geles. I was sweating and tired from dance class, but I was determined to get down the steps and around the winding hall to the very dark and French cafe-looking village vanguard where so many jazz musicians had honed their skills. When I finally got in after showing my ID, there was only standing room, so I stood as close to the bandstand as was possible without offending someone. Pharoah picked up his horn and with a booming tenor saxophone captivated the audience. Leon Thomas, the vocalist, began, "The Creator has a master plan," and the people's faces just lifted up. The drummer, Norman Connors, had everybody's feet moving. Then suddenly, on the far right elevated portion of the club, a young woman with short cropped hair, thin of body and long of leg, began to dance. The loose clothing she had on floated through the air as her arms swept across the sitting patrons. She was so vibrant and innovative, demonstrating West African, Cuban, and what seemed like Haitian movement, and was fabulous. The improvisations had all eyes between her and Pharoah. The dancer was attracting so much attention, but her movements did not distract from the moment. It amplified it. It made the human body part of the band. She was golden and glistening as the night went on, and she danced until the music ended. She got as much applause as the band did. As a band, to head in circles around. Eventually, even the fingers and wrists would be involved. Oh, no. Hold on. I was right. It was. She got much applause as a band. And then I turned the page to the wrong page. Oh, and she hugged Pharoah when he put his horn down. So I was at the right place. They made a remarkable ensemble. There was a sign in the window in San Francisco Fillmore District that a series of Haitian dance classes would begin in a week. No one before had ever offered Haitian dance. Only Afro-Cuban had been available, so I was excited. I signed and put my money down for the series, and I had secured my space. The day I walked into the studio and situated myself in the third row middle to the right of where the teacher would be, so I could see every movement, I realized that the woman who was about to lead the class was the same woman I had seen dancing in New York at the Village Vanguard. There was no possibility that she would remember me, but I was just a part of a huge crowd of admirers, but I certainly remembered her. Class began in an unusual way for me because we started to dance immediately. At first, there were small steps, one side, then the other. Then it became more complicated as knees were bent and bodies had contracted, adding to pulsing feet. Next, the arms were added and the wrists and the head in circles around. Eventually, even the fingers and the wrists would be involved in the series. Finally, I realized that although I had been expecting exercises and a warm-up, we had done just that. It almost seemed like we were dancing. This was Alifu Usamari's typical beginning, the emergence of students in dance so that every movement strengthened the body and every movement carved a form in the air. She explained to us that because Caribbean people lived on islands, their movements reflected the softness of the waves receding from the soil, the strength of the waves approaching, but always there was a softness, no jagged, jerky, or angular hard edges, especially in Haitian dance. She found the rippling of the spine to engender the resilience of the Haitian people and believed that dance was as revealing of politics of a people as a propaganda artist is. I was exhausted when class was over and responding to muscles in my back I did not know I had. It's hard to move from Catherine Dunham, Ed Mock, and Raymond Sawyer to the soft curves and slippery hips of my new teacher. I was impressed. The next day before class, I presented her with the deepest red apple I could find and went back to my space. At everybody's dance studio, Halifa began to teach class on a regular basis. It ranged from African dance to jazz. I went at every opportunity to soak up new movements and muscles I was discovering. Eventually, Halifa asked me to join her company, along with Elia Marta from Panama, Aisha of Sweet Honey in the Rock, to do a production for us called The Evolution of Black Dance, which traces the history of the African-American movement from Africa to the present day. Beginning with movements from Ghana and Nigeria, we went through ring shouts, spear dances, clogging, cakewalk, Charleston, jitterbug, boogie-woogie. Any movement a black person did was traced through this hour-long production. Halifa had us perform in schools, in YMCAs, in Carver YMCAs, at union halls, all over the Bay Area. It was difficult to get ready to be on stage at 10 o'clock in the morning, but we did it. And she had engagements. She would pick us up individually because none of us had cars. I made the mistake of turning off my phone because I did not want to be bothered and was roundly scolded by Halifa, who said that it was very unprofessional to be unreachable. The next project Halifa had was of 4 women, monologues of black women and music, sound, and dance. I played Bag Lady and was so good until when I tried to make my entrance from the outside, the usher would not let me in. She threatened to call the police if I did not stop banging on the door. Finally, she opened the door to say she would call the police I said, not until I make my entrance. Whereupon she got out of my way, and I entered late but loudly. My experience with Halifa not only taught me about the discipline of being a professional dancer, but also the joy. I will never forget how she reminded me that Bernice Ross had refused to hire me because I was late for a rehearsal because my water was turned off, and I had to see to it. Halifa said, "You've got to keep your water and your phone on because you're going to be a black dancer and you have to take care of yourself or you won't get any jobs." I never made those mistakes again. Learning the movements of West Africa, East New York, East Los Angeles, East Texas, melded the experiences of the black people from West Africa and East Africa in movement for me. I was lucky that Halifa had experienced all these things and could instill in me those aesthetics. She was a combination of the 20th century and 16th century African art. What a blessing. I shall never forget those ring shelves that Aisha did. We got so happy we thought we were in church. That's what dancing with Halifu could do for you. Learning movements that are ancient and still alive from the gods of Nigeria, Mozambique, and Angola draw us closer to those people we have kept those dances alive, and we were able to join them communally at this time and in this space. To carry that forward, Halifu carries the Catherine Dunham technique as a foundation of Black dance, so our techniques come from the grand dame of Black dance. Catherine Dunham insisted that we study not only movement, but the intellectual and spiritual capacities of the art form. Halifu also demonstrates the importance of community outreach by involving us with public schools, libraries, churches, and YMCAs, where ordinary Black and Latin people attend to their leisure and their senses of beauty. Hopefully our presence extended that to include Black dance and movement, thus including them in this aesthetic timeline. Which brings us to Otis Salid. When you see Otis Salid dance, you can smell a man. I first saw Otis at Roger Furman's New Heritage Repertory Theater after production of Strivers Row with the indomitable Lori Carlos. I was still sweating from class with Diane McIntyre on 125th Street in Harlem, but the rumors of Strivers Row had been so intense and long-lasting that I had to see it. Sweat or no. I spotted Salid across the house, thoroughly enjoying himself, so that the lines of the play seemed to rivet his body. The next time I saw Otis was at a Black dance conference in New York. The hotel was abuzz with African American and African dancers from around the world. There was no way to escape the frenetic energy of these performers, but I escaped to chat with Hector Lino, the Black Guatemalan cultural essayist. We reviewed and critiqued and gossiped about Black dancers we had seen and the politics of Black dance companies and their members. We must have been pretty raucous because all of a sudden the door flew open and there was none other than Otis Salid in the portal, muscular, Black, and gleaming with a smile so broad you'd think he'd seen Santa Claus. What was stunning was his approach to me. "Ntozake, where have you been?" I didn't have a chance to answer before he literally swept me off my feet, and with me in his arms, he bid Hector Lino farewell. Female dancers are always gossiping about the men who lift us in the middle of a dance and how well they can control our bodies and how well they support us as we glide in the air 6 feet off the ground. Does he have firm grip of my back? Are my legs okay? Will he let go without warning? Am I safe? These are the questions we ask as we lift our bodies and focus our energy on our pelvic muscles, so we are in good form as we are poised in midair. Otis Salid held me as if I was light as a feather. I could feel the strength of his arms and back as he carried me down the hallways, past plain hotel rooms whose numbers seemed to race as we moved. I thought of the characters in a Frank Yerby novel, Foxes of Harrow, the Black writer who traced the antebellum South and treatment of enslaved African Americans in the South. The Black male characters were always muscular and defiant. I thought of their women and children buffeted from ship to shore, crying or screaming, "Never, never, never," in whatever language they spoke. In this novel, a woman grabs her infant child and runs with her to the cliff overlooking the ocean to avoid her fate of slavery. She stood for a moment on the edge, infant in front of her on her arms, and looked back to see a robust Black man running toward her with his arms outstretched just before she jumped. The look on the man's face when he turned to see the overseer coming after him was so full of rebellion that I feared for his life. That is how it feels to be carried by Otis Salid down a hallway. You are saved from the possibility of falling. Salid's grasp on my thigh and between my shoulder blades assured my safety. In the line of his body, in the line of beauty, his movement compelled. This is one of the elements you encounter when you dance with Otis Salid, along with lyricism, strength, and good form. Otis Halid offers opportunities for a dancer's body that we all dream of. With quick, punctuated movement, our feet move diagonally across the floor as if we were the beats of an African drum, keeping rhythm of a soprano horn in a Coltrane and Jimmy Garrison duet. We are led to believe our bodies reflect the wildness of Albert Ayler and Max Roach's snare drum, keeping us grounded, but ever so suspended from sound to sound. We discover we can be more modern than we expected, while bound to what had come before, but never enslaved by it. Salid moves on to choreograph TV shows like Fame and various commercials, then on to productions like South Pacific Cabaret and The Wiz. Like I said, when you see Otis Salid, you can smell a man. But this is not Bigger Thomas or Mandingo or even Superfly. This is a black man in all his might and glory, as gentle as a lamb, as alluring as a gazelle, swift like a panther, with the intellect of Voltaire and the reasoning of Sartre. It is called a modern man of color whose insistence on his masculinity in this world breaks from the stereotype of black sexuality as brute force and size, and leaves us with a man of many moods, many possibilities, many gestures, and reachings for humanity always denied him. We are asked to join this journey with him toward a more complex and delicate manifestation of our humanity, whatever class or color we are. Like an Alfredo de la Fe pizzicato, he attacks and seduces, attacks and sighs, attacks and glides like a good black dancer on a disco floor. He is black manhood from every angle of all at once. He's a black man holding us, like the Allstate man says, "Are you in good hands?" We say, yes, we're in the vision of Otis Salid. Finally, the primary influence on me has been Diane McIntyre. And this is my experience with Diane McIntyre. One summer night at the East, which used to be, it was an alternative space to nightclubs where they sold fruit juice and organic food, where they could play new black music, or what you would call not smooth or fusion black music, where it was wild black music. Wild, it used to be called jazz, but we called it new black music, or classical black music. It was called the East. It was in Brooklyn. And you had to take a train ride. It was really long from Barnard to get there. It was a long train ride. Anyway, Lonnie Davis and I, who's my classmate that I met here, we used to take that train ride to Brooklyn, to the East. One summer night at the East in Brooklyn, I was dancing wildly to somebody's music when I was joined by a woman whose muscles screamed discipline and whose movements suggested never seen before. As I fell to the side of the wall, she introduced herself as Bernadine Jennings. We became fast friends, dancing anywhere we could, with whomever we could. Bernadine changed my life. She introduced me to Clark Center, where not only Fred Benjamin and Pepsi Bastel taught, alongside Charles Moore and Lorma Machado, but also Tito Sampa of the Congo and Mercedes Batista of Brazil explored movement and welcomed students. With Bernadine's guidance, I found myself studying with all of them. One day, Bernadine said there was a young woman in Harlem who was holding auditions for a new dance company. Bernadine thought I should try out. I hesitated, and Bernadine said, "They may have more technique, but they haven't got your spirit. Go ahead and try." So I did. 125th Street and First Avenue in the 70s was bleak and forlorn. I searched high and low for a dance studio. To my chagrin, all I found was a methadone clinic and a church, a storefront church. I turned around, almost giving up hope, when I saw a sign pointing to the second floor of the methadone clinic, where a name said Diane McIntyre. I knew that was where I was supposed to go. I went past the sniffling junkies and the weakened steps till I found Studio A. Once I opened the door, I knew I was safe. Dancers lined the walls. There was a pianist and a drummer, and some woman at a table with pieces of paper. Somebody gave me a piece of paper with a number on it. I just got in line like the rest of them and waited for my number to be called. I kept looking around at all these other dancers who looked so professional and so self-confident. I began to wonder about myself and what made me think I was ready for this level of dance. Anyway, I was in line already. I had a number and I would do just my best. That's all I could do. So when my turn came up, I did the combination twice without missing a beat and then back to my place. Then they started calling out numbers. My heart was beating very fast, and I felt my legs weaken, but my number was not called. I was still in the room with fewer dancers, but they were formidable. We got called to do some other combination. Once again, I did okay. I did okay twice on the left and once on the right. My pirouettes got confused, though. They went the wrong way. But I did turn and managed to get back to first position pretty like everybody else. Finally, there was a section where we were supposed to improvise 32 counts. I was scared to death. 32 counts, that was a long time. But I said, what the hell, I'm here. And we began. I danced my heart out, and scared as I was, all I could do was keep myself standing up and not crying. Then suddenly, while I was standing in this virtual stupor, I heard my number being called. I was sure I should get ready to leave, but the voice began to congratulate us as new members of Sounds in Motion Dance Company. That's how I met Diane McIntyre. Sounds in Motion was her baby, and she was the primary judge. To my surprise, I was a scholarship student for Sounds in Motion, which meant I had to clean up the floors and windows, but I wouldn't be forced to pay for class, and I couldn't miss a class. What a joy, what a freedom to be able to say, I belonged to a group of people whose main objective in life was to dance. I had found a home at last. I met my dear friend Mickey Davison at the same audition. She was a scholarship student too. We had the energy but not yet the technique to be in the primary company. But that did not bother me at all. All I had to do was learn, and learning is such a pleasure. I took Diane McIntyre's classes, and under her tutelage, learned eagerly. There was no end to the surprise at what the human body could do. Diane's dance was predicated on the breath, so that eventually the sounds of breathing fiercely or gently became our music. To my surprise, Bernadine sauntered through the doors, gave Diane a big hug, and waved at me. It turned out that Bernadine was one of Diane's primary dancers. I had a lot to learn. Shh. Shh. These are not the random sounds of the wind on the prairie or the hush of the subway. The slight, muscular woman in the front of the dance studio, facing 125th Street on a bright Saturday afternoon, began the intermediate class of improvisation and modern dance. McIntyre confronts contemporary political conflicts and conquests as she trains her dancers to finagle through space as an organizer trains his troupe to evade the police. She uses lyricism of Gene Schumer and the taut prose of Toni Morrison. Toni Morrison to intimate the situations of young black girls and women. The music she engages from Cecil Taylor's piano to Ram Jamin's violin are suitable strings from which she jumps into movement, begging us to take a chance with her, leap with her, the sky with her, leap for the unknown ground, leap for the unknown future, leap for our victory. That is what black dance can bring to us. These choreographers have opened the path. It is up to us to walk it. Thank you. This is Michelle.
Sydney.
Sydney, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
It's
Oh,
all right.
God. Oh, Jesus.
You're fine.
Please forgive me.
You're forgiven.
Okay, goody.
So I am sitting in gratitude. Thank you very much for sharing that essay. Can we give one more round of applause?
Okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm okay.
No, I said, was it okay?
Yeah, it was great.
Oh, okay.
So again, my name is Sydney Mosley. I am an alum of Barnard College, class of 2007, where I, thank you, double majored in Africana Studies and in dance. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to sit here with Ntozake Shange, who I actually very much believe that my own creative work is in your legacy, and it is a privilege to have the opportunity to chat with you a little bit tonight.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I'm just going to dive right in and connect to what you just shared with us about these 4 artists who you worked with over the years. And I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about the way that social justice issues intersected with the work of some of these artists that you shared with us about. You started a little bit at the end talking about Diane McIntyre, maybe continuing there? Or?
Well, that's awfully broad.
It is broad.
Let me see if I could. I know Diane's pieces, one of the things about Diane and Mickey Davidson that's parallel is that the dances can sometimes be very violent, and the movement is violent, and the movement can throw you across the stage or wound you. I've had black and blue marks from being thrown or from thrusting myself. You don't even have to be thrown, but it reflects the violence in our communities. It gives us a chance to watch and observe the violence that is perpetrated upon us every day from a distance that's safe because that's art. And when we feel it, we don't feel it immediately. We feel it vicariously, except many of us cry or gasp or sigh with relief or in horror as we see these dancers putting themselves through these paces that seem that they are beyond humanity. Diane's work reflects that, as well as the tenderness of moments between mothers and daughters, between lovers, between friends. I know the last piece of Diane's that was overtly political was a piece she choreographed where she used speeches from Malcolm X and Martin Luther King as the music. And the movement was only to those 2 speeches. And the speeches were segued in and out of each other. And the only way you'd know who was talking was by the sound of their voice and by the change in the movements that she was doing. And I found it to be particularly pungent. It was very powerful. It wasn't long, but it was very powerful. And she did that at the same time that there was a dance, I think it was called 5 Divas, and there were 5 black dancers ranging from Carmen de Lavalade to Diane, to young black dancers whose names have escaped me now. But there were 5 dancers from 5 different eras, and the change in their movements, vocabulary, as well as their proficiency varied. But what was striking is that they all addressed the issue of oppression of women or of us as a people in one way or another, even if it was not the main topic of the dance. It seeped through the movement. You could feel it in the movement. And even Ailey does this, and Lucy Jones does it. So it's inescapable. It's the same, like when they asked me, are you more of a feminist than you are a black woman? Well, I have no way of knowing because I was both at the same time. I had no vocabulary for that. It's been the same all along. So is that an answer?
Yeah, that's a great answer.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if you wanted to talk about any of the other artists.
I talked about Otis. I talked about, I think I said what I had, I distilled what I had to say about them.
Okay, great. So listening in particular to your experience with Halifu Osumari, it reminds me a lot of working with my own dancers in my own dance company. In particular, when you were talking about her telling you to keep your phone on and your water on, and just that way, it just reminds me of how we take care of each other and how we make sure that we have all that we need to move forward. And connecting that to this idea of dancing together and that dancing feeling like being in church. And so I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about if you found connections in that way, just the way that you all were organized together as a company, and how that showed up in the dance work in your relationships.
Oh my. Ours is quite a cantankerous group of women. That maybe left better unsaid. But we were all meditating together. We all joined transcendental meditation. So we all did that, which was calming and joining us in one meditative unit that we would all do before a show. And that was something that united us. And we also all prayed together before a show in a circle. We do that in theater as well. Have a round circle that you pray in. But I think the feeling of church and of joy that you get comes as the class goes on, and there's a pulse that starts to grow in the class. And even when you go from one side to the other and you're waiting to go for your next turn, you can't stand still. Just keep moving, because the Spirit's got a hold to you, and the Spirit's in the room, it's in the movement, and you can't get it out of your body. And that's like church. You can't get Jesus out your body. And he's in your body, he's in your soul, he's in everything. He's in the food you touch, he's in your sister, he's in the next person you see. And it's that feeling of church comes in with the movement. That's with everybody. Everybody can do that. Fred Benjamin can do that, as sexy as he was. He could do that. Make you feel like you're in church, like you got blessed. That's what it is. It's a feeling of being blessed. That's what it is.
Yeah, I agree. And have had that experience many times. Another thing a word that is coming up over and over again is joy and is pleasure. And I'm wondering if you would share with us what brings you joy.
Language brings me joy. My daughter brings me joy. Movement brings me joy. Beauty brings me joy. I get a big smile on my face looking at a piece of sculpture. It's what brings. A lot of things bring me joy. I am a very joyful person. And that's a quiet secret, but I am a very joyful person. Art brings me joy. Other people bring me joy. Comedy brings me joy. Funny things that happen in the world bring me joy. Like Donald Trump brings me joy in a weird way. I laugh at him harder than I laugh at anybody in the world. And that's reverse, but I couldn't resist. So I get joy from a lot of things. Good food brings me joy.
Hello. Yeah. Are there any questions you might want to ask me?
What kind of dance do you all do at Barnard? When I was at Barnard, we didn't have art, we didn't have architecture, we didn't have African American studies, we didn't have dance. We had art history. We still have art history. But so it was a whole different experience. So tell me about art at Barnard.
Well, I can speak to dance at Barnard. I don't know about art in general. For me, my experience was there was all types of dance. There's ballet, there is all different styles of modern and contemporary dance. So everything from, being on the floor and doing a lot of laban and bartenief, and also, much more influenced by the diaspora. There's African dance. There's all sorts of cultural dances, Indian dance, flamenco, et cetera, et cetera. So, and dancers have the opportunity to choose what they want to do, and they also have the opportunity, in addition to dancing, to study in a more critical way, and learn specifically about dance in New York City, and really access the resources of the city.
Okay,
So, yeah.
that's amazing. That was undreamed of. We couldn't even dream that far ahead. All we could dream of was could we read a black book? And could we read Native Son? Let alone Their Eyes Are Watching God, which wasn't published when I was in college. Wasn't published when I was in graduate school. They republished it after 50 years. It's the first time it was available was in 1971. So I missed all that, but I got it in later life. But that's all right. So everything's all right. Okay, let me see. I asked you that question. Let me see what else. Are there any? I know what happened. That was interesting. That'd be interesting to these people here. We had about, gosh, it must be maybe 20 years ago or 15 years ago, one of those periods. We had a third world women's alumni dinner. And we thought like Black and Puerto Rican women were going to show up. Italian women came, Asian women came, East Indian women came. It was all of us who had been excluded from being at Barnard. The Italian woman came because she thought she was the only Catholic who was at Barnard. And she also thought she was the darkest one at the school. And the Asian women came because they had felt excluded and they never participated in anything. And the Latin women came because they thought they were us. And the East Indian women came because they say they were Indian, they say what tribe. And so that was an experience that was very wrenching for me, but it was also a joyful experience. And that was something that Barnard offered me that I find invaluable. To this day, I'm still moved when I think about it. And it's something you learn here. I knew Barnard was going to be a new experience for me when I went to the dining room the first time, and all the help in the kitchen was Irish. I knew I was in for something different. This is going to be a new experience. There's no colored people in the kitchen. So anyway, so we can open it to the floor now, I think.
Yes.
Sydney, if that's all right with you.
That's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sydney and I are open for questions.
Yes. Yes, we are. Think we got somebody over here? Or no?
You don't have to have questions.
We can keep talking. Oh.
Hi, I'm Tiana. I just wanted to know. Oh, thank you. This is Tiana. I just wanted to know what you thought was your greatest contribution to the Black arts movement of the 70s.
Amiri Baraka. When the Black Arts Movement started, he was still Leroy Jones. He became Amiri Baraka later in time as that went on. But he was the leading, most powerful voice of, I'll say literature, and I have to say John Coltrane for music. And for painting, Charles Biggers. I'm sorry. I just got lost for a second. But Amiri Baraka, his work as a young man in his 20s was so lyrical and fragile and powerful at the same time that I, as a teenager, I just found it absolutely entrancing. And his A Portrait of an Artist is the 20-volume suicide note. I carried around like a Bible. It was just my most precious possession. I found phrases in there that still ring for me today, and I always am writing with an eye toward reaching that kind of beauty in a line that he was able to attain. And then when he wrote The Toilet and The Dutchman, he just stretched drama to new elements for Black people, a new way of thinking about ourselves, of taking back our voice, of taking back agency. He was very powerful, and we can't allow what Marxism and a peculiar kind of Black nationalism that he adopted in later life, we can't allow that to warp our perception of him as a force and as a power in our art, in our artistic development as a people. Kim?
I don't have the language to ask this question, but I'm gonna ask it. And I guess I wanted to know if there was a difference, what the difference might have been between the kind of culture of dance in California, San Francisco, and in New York City.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. It's much more integrated. I belong to Raymond Sawyer's Afro-Asian Dance Company. We were the only Afro-Asian dance company in the country. Filipinos and Black people and Mexicans and Japanese people and Navajo people, we all took class together. We all learned Black dance together. We were all being molded as Black people, as some kind of Black people, as Brazilian Black people, or Cuban Black people, or modern dance Black people, or jazz dance Black people. But everybody of color was under this one rubric of dance of the Africans. And it was also not so technically based as Eastern dances. So you could get away with not ever having taken ballet in California. It's hard to do that in New York. See what else. I think we had more classes with live music of varied kinds of musicians, because the musicians weren't so expensive in California as they were in New York. And they would play sometimes for free. And they were also amenable to performing with you for a minimal amount of money. So that's one big difference. And also, we could learn flamenco or we could learn folklorico. I took folklorico dances from Mexico and Panama. And I was welcomed in those classes. There were not these rigid racial and ethnic boundaries as there are back east. Like the original For Color Girls was Black and Latin and Asian cast. When we came back east, the only thing I could conceive of us being was all Black English speakers, which had never been my intent. But I was grooming it for a California population of artists. When I came back east, I couldn't find that. I couldn't find that blend. So I think that's true of all art in California at that time. I can't speak for now. Yes.
I was a graduate student at San Francisco State in the early 70s, and I followed you then. There was a group of dancers, the Wajumbi dancers
Yes.
at San Francisco State. They went to Festac,
The one in Nigeria?
Yes. Were you a part of that group?
No.
Okay.
Unfortunately, no.
All right.
I was teaching by then, and so I was teaching in Sonoma of all places. So my time was spent going from Sonoma back to San Francisco to take dance class, and then doing poetry readings in the nighttime. So I didn't get to join a dance company until I moved back east. No, that's not true. That's an outright lie. I didn't get to join another dance company until I moved back east. Yes?
There's a question in the middle.
Compared to other artistic forms, what for you is the most precious component of the expression in dance?
What's the precious what?
I'm sorry?
Can you repeat that for me, please?
Yeah, compared to visual art or writing or any of those things, I mean, your passion in dance is really stunning. And so I was just wanted to know from your perspective, what is so precious about it that privileges it relative to some of the other ways that one can express herself artistically?
The exhaustion of the human body. the human body's capacity for sweat and palpitation of the heart and just a force in the air, just being free, having the body be free in the air is what makes it precious to me and what I find most joyful, even more joyful than poetry it is for me.
Hi, my name is Hattie. I'm a senior here at Barnard. I'm in the Africana department. And I was a dancer as well from the age of 10 until I still take classes at Barnard, and I'm thinking a lot about the passing of Arthur Mitchell.
Yes.
And wondering what you, both of you or either of you see as maybe like what is kind of the future of Black dance. I went to an all-Black dance school, and that was a really unique space for me, but it's not what I think many children of color are growing up as for their dance experience. And so what do you see as next steps or the future of Black dance as it stands?
You turn to me.
I could answer.
Why don't you go first? 'Cause you're closer to, she's closer to the future than I am.
That's a very large question, and I am not a fortune teller, so I'll start with that. I think what I see happening in Black dance now amongst my colleagues is a futuring in our work. So I see Black artists making work with action plans, making work that imagines new futures, followed by like a real community engagement plan that gets us to it. And I think that that is absolutely in the legacy of Arthur Mitchell, who, created Dance Theater of Harlem, sparked by the death of Dr. King, right? So feeling like, okay, how can we make our physical movement work into movement work? I see happening more and more and more, and it is a conversation that I have every day. And yes, we are still answering this question about what is the role of the Negro. Yes, we are still asking and answering this question, and until we figure out what is the role of the Negro in this country, we're still going to be asking and answering that question, right? So I see the trend of us working that out in the work, which is generation work, right? Like this is generational, and I don't know, like what the next cohort is going to be working on, but that's what we're doing.
You mentioned something that has presented itself as a problem to me recently. In work I've been working on and in looking at other young people's work. I am of a generation, I think, where I cannot imagine us winning. I don't think it's in my ontological reality to conceive of a Black reality where I have won, where we are not an oppressed people, where we control our own lives, where we are not self-hating. I have difficulty imagining that. And I think it's a generation that can imagine that, who exists among us now. They are here now. Those young people are here now. They can do that. They did that wonderful film. What was the name of that film? Black something. Black Panther. Yes, Black Panther. They did that wonderful film. Those people who can see beyond this. And that's what I think the future of Black art is. And people who can see beyond white people, who can see beyond what has happened to us. And I am just too old to imagine that.
You're not too old. I'm just young and naive enough to think that maybe I can put a little dent. That's
Okay.
it.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
I actually just have a comment. I'm very moved to be in the audience at your feet, Ms. Shange. It's interesting to me that you mentioned that artists today, young black people, can't imagine a world where we win. I did for Color Girls 10 years ago. I played Lady in Red in Los Angeles. And that play to me for Color Girls is a rite of passage. It certainly was for me as an artist and as a woman, as a human being. And it was one of the things that helped me to have the frame of mind that I can win. So I just say all that to say thank you, and that your work has made that possible for myself, and I'm sure many, many, many young women of color who have read the play, who've seen the play, who've performed it. So again, thank you. And thank you, Barnard, for having me here today. And I'm class of 2001.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Sheila, and I have not been familiar with your work, but I want to comment on the way in which you tell a story. I'm a playwright, and you bring us into the scene. You make us feel the sweat and the joy of the dance.
Oh, good.
And so, thank you.
Oh, that makes me feel very good.
So, to wrap up, I hear you're writing a book.
I'm doing a book on Black dance. Yes.
Oh, yeah? When's it going to be published?
Well, sometime in 2020.
Okay.
Is that 2020?
Yeah.
Yes, 2020.
Great. I'm going to have a new dance in 2020. You'll have a new book. It'll just all be out in the world.
Oh, and I have a little book that's going to be out in the spring, a little chapbook called I'm an Old Woman. That's a very funny book. It's a very delicate book. I was very privileged that this small press in California agreed to do it. It's just one long poem. It is not a collection of poems. It's one long poem about being an old woman and what that entails when you're living in the world called the United States. And have been to a college like Barnard, and have been me, essentially, and my experience as growing all those years. And it ends up being, it's really very funny. It's not sad at all. And that's one thing that I can tell the young people. This idea that I'm a grandmother, and this idea we had of grandmothers who sit on portraits with booties is really passé. We are going out on dates. We have a matching line on the computer. We have makeup made for us and anti-wrinkle creams. And all kinds of things that our grandmothers did not have. And so it makes us a whole new breed of grandmother. And so I would hope that you all would get used to the idea that your grandmother may be out there flinging her heels at the same nightclub you're at. Maybe one day.
Amen.
Thank you, Ntozake, thank you, Sydney, and Denise, if I may. This would not have been possible without you. Tonight, I don't know, colleagues and students, if you listened, what was so amazing about tonight was the close listening. And then students speaking, people from the community speaking, just, there was a tutti, as you would say in a concert hall. Thank you, Denise. Thank you. Good night.